for our show.
Hey, welcome everybody to Office Hours. On behalf
Here
of
we are.
John Arms and myself, we're super excited to have you all here with us. We've got our attendees joining and we're ready to talk business. Today's a fun treat for me and I think for all of us because we've got Nigel Packer with Pelotis Online from the UK joining us. This is his Friday evening and we're delighted to have you with us today, Nigel. To do a brief intro on Nigel, he's a digital customer experience consultant and trainer. He's also an author and digital business speaker. For over 25 years, he's used extensive knowledge and broad range of experiences to engage, educate, and entertain business audiences across the UK and Europe. He's going to talk to us today about buyers' journeys and customer experience in personas, and so much more. For our ground rules today, remember, for our attendees, you are welcome to chat us questions as we go through. And then at about the halfway-ish point, maybe a little bit before, we'll turn everyone on so that they can talk. And if you raise your hand, we'll actually make you a panelist so we can see you as well. This is your time, and we're delighted to have you here. John, anything else to add?
I always have something to add.
Yes.
It's inescapable, right? I want our listeners and our panelists to know that Dave had a little just simple outpatient surgery yesterday on his nose. It wasn't cosmetic, and so if he gets real loopy today, just go with it. Just go with it. We may not hear as much as we usually do, but he might just start talking about unicorns and butterflies. And I think that's okay, Dave. I think that's actually additive to the show when you really think about it. But I hope you do feel better.
Yeah. I stayed off the drugs this morning. Maybe I should have got on them. Would have been interesting. Yeah.
Do they have you on some goodies? Are you on some goodies?
The good stuff.
Oh man, that's yeah. Try not to get addicted.
No.
And Nigel, what time is it, Nigel, in the UK?
It's currently 3 minutes past 7 in the evening.
Oh man, and so we're seeing a good picture of your office. And is somewhere in the situation, is there a scotch?
No. I don't drink and broadcast at the same time.
Oh, okay, got it. The old school broadcasters, I don't think they broadcast without drinking back in the old days.
I hear that. I used to do public speaking, and I used to have a couple of quick drinks beforehand.
But
it does relax you a little bit, but sometimes a little bit too much. And I have been known to get carried away.
7 p.m. on a Friday in Swan. Are you in Swansea?
I'm in Swansea Bay, so I'm about 100 yards from the beach.
That just sounds so nice. 100 yards from the beach.
Yeah.
I feel like I should get my Irish fishing sweater on and a British cap. We should do this.
Well, you do that, and I'll get my fishing gear up. We'll go fishing.
Oh, I love it. Well, we're gonna have a good show. Buyer personas and just knowing your customer, right? Just taking the time to know. I think our economy has sort of trained us in so many ways to just do the numbers and drill through it's become a grind. And it's really important to stop. And while those are important, we have to measure things and we have to execute efficiently, but not at the expense of the buyer and the customer. So Nigel, I'm really looking forward to your insight on that, because it applies to fractionals, it applies to small business, it applies to those of us. This world we're in here, I say we're not on the Fortune 2000 list, we're just underneath that. And it really applies. So I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on buyer personas and especially today.
Yeah. Well, I thank you very much indeed, Dave and John, for inviting me to speak. I really appreciate it. One of the things that was mentioned, I'm so sorry, I've been looking everywhere for his name. The gentleman who spoke last week.
That was Art Hoffman.
Yes.
Yeah. From InLink Advisors. Yep.
Yeah, and he was talking about the fractional executives and people who were small. We call them freelancers around Europe. They just run their own business. Now, one of the things, especially for those watching this broadcast, is that if you have a small business and you think about it, how many clients can you deal with at any one time? And so when you start analyzing that and thinking about the way that the way that you're guided to do your marketing and your promotion, it's about throwing loads of information out there, throwing lots of advertisements and articles and social media and engagements and networking and everything else. And then suddenly you get 10 people coming to speak to you straight away.
Yeah.
And they want you to do work, okay, because you've been successful.
Totally different. It's just, you're so right,
Yeah.
right? It's like, it's this micro marketing thing as opposed to this mass marketing thing.
Exactly. So you've got to sit back a little bit and say, well, who do I want as a customer? What do I get the best pleasure out of? So let's enjoy this work and make the money we need to make. And it's something that I've spoken on a number of European freelance groups about this, because so many of them are chasing after customers, and the mistake that they always make is they chase after lots of customers, get a lot of inquiries, they pick up the few clients that they want, and then they just concentrate on that work, probably between 3 and 6 clients at any one time.
Yeah.
They work with those clients for anything between 6 and 12 months on a contract, and then suddenly it all stops. So then they got to really work hard again to go and grab another 6 clients.
Right.
And it's stressful. Whereas if you're just quietly dripping stuff out after the target groups and markets that you want and the people you want as customers, then you can keep that flow going really nicely. If you want to grow your business, have associates and have people working with you, yes, you've got to work a little bit harder. You've got to put more effort into your marketing. But when you're thinking about it, you really want to go after the people you want as customers. And I did an experiment a couple of years ago with a small campsite down in West Wales. And I said to the owner, and I do this with all my clients, who do you want as customers? And when we sat down and did all the workings out and how many pictures they had on their campsite and what facilities they had there, and how many weeks that this campsite was opened, we worked it out. They needed, I think they needed something about 903 customers every year. Okay, and then I said, what type of customers? And the woman who ran the campsite, she said, I want to hear the sound of children laughing and giggling and playing in the meadows, coming up to the farmhouse in the evenings. And I said, right, so you want families. Okay, that's great for the center of the holidays, the 6 weeks of the school holidays. But what about the weeks before and the weeks afterwards in the week? Oh, well, I quite like couples, she said. I don't want gangs of young people and large crowds of young people and stuff making a lot of noise and causing problems, and party goers. So I said, right, that's fine. And from that information, we identified there was a huge market for those 2 groups, the family groups, and also the couples groups, young couples as well as older couples. And what we worked out was, because we knew who we were writing to, we wrote the content of the website and the imagery in the website to suit those people. So if somebody who wants to go to a campsite where they've got a bar, a theatre, entertainments, they've got a swimming pool, they've got children's play areas and all these other things, we made sure that anyone who saw this would see that it's not the sort of place that they want to go to. So we managed to keep the people away that we didn't want, as well as attracting the people that they did want as customers.
Right.
There's a big lesson in there, Nigel, in that you started your customer persona, not with the math, which is interesting. You know, it's traditional. How many? So you said about 900. Okay, there. But when you got into it, you thought about the experiences. It was about what kind of people, what sort of noises you want to hear, what sort of, you know, it was all about this aura, right? And I'm afraid, and this is why I'm so glad to have you talk about this today. I'm afraid that we have to undo that thinking. Math is important, but if you're not thinking about the experience and the connections and the humanity of it, then all you have is math, and then you've got nothing to market. Why are we doing things so much beginning with the math and only staying there? Why do we struggle to get off of the math and into the humanity? This is a question for you, Nigel.
I think it's because we're conditioned to do that. All business studies courses, all degrees in business management, they all focus on mathematics, targets, mathematics. Whereas if you look at the really successful businesses, they started by dealing with a customer. Okay, what do the customer want? Can we produce that? Can we make it? And let's sell it to them. And then the customers come along. And you know, Apple. I'll say no more than
all
just
about the
Apple.
experience. Yeah.
It's all about the experience, from actually opening the box, the time it takes for that lid to lift off. They made it exciting, removing that plastic sleeve off the front of the screen.
Yeah, they got me on that, by the way. That's just, I know.
They've turned everything for the whole customer journey. And that's a completely different subject matter. I'll do that for you again in the future. But
yeah.
Do you guys keep those boxes? Like,
No.
I can't even throw those boxes away.
Are they worth a fortune?
Yeah, I just
the
got rid of like
boxes?
15 of them. Yeah. So
people collect the boxes. I mean, they haven't got the phones; they just collect the boxes, and they're really high quality boxes. Everything about it is saying we think this is a fantastic product, and we want you to respect it, and we respect you for buying it. And it's everything about that relationship between the company and the buyer. Okay, and that's what they. You look at some of the speeches that Steve Jobs did. He talked about getting it right for the customer, and about the whole experience from the beginning to the end. And even if you go back to banks and things like that, they tell you, you know, when you do a business plan, they're vaguely interested in the marketing, okay, or the marketing section of it. But what they want to see it right at the back, 5-year profit and loss, forecast and profit and loss.
Yeah.
And yes, they're important. You've got to keep an eye on those things. And they're part and parcel of the business. But I used to write lots of business plans, and I used to do the profit and loss for people. And they say, well, I don't know, how are we going to get as many customers? I said, well, you should do if you work hard at it. But you've never worked, it's a new business. You're doing your first year of profit and loss. So just put all your expenses in and just make the rest of the numbers up. Don't get too extravagant with it. Okay. And nobody expects you to make a profit in the first year. If you do, you're doing really well. And this is, as you said, everything is about the numbers, but the numbers come along. Okay. Apple were up against Microsoft in the beginning. Okay. And then they changed their thoughts about it, and then just went for the quality product and giving people and developing things like the MP3 player and the shuffle and all the other things that they have.
So how do you take your customers through that, knowing that the numbers are going to come along? Like, tell us about how you guide, because that's your job, right? That's what
how
you
do
do.
You get them to know their customer?
Yeah. I basically start off with saying to them, who do you want as customers? How many do you need to break even? Okay, and work out how much you need to earn to make it worthwhile. So then you can work out your break-even point and all the other things as well. And often you find that people think that they've got to send out 1,000 emails a week to get 100 responses, and most of them are not very disappointing. To get that 5 customers, potential customers, to start an engagement to go on from that. And I think everyone gets a bit sort of anxious when they start doing this. And then there's other people who don't want to send lots of emails out because they think they're just pestering people. And again, promotion and marketing in the States is slightly different to the UK and Europe. We tend to be a little bit more aloof and a little bit more reserved. And we're afraid of upsetting people by sending them too much stuff because they'll think it's spam, and you'll end up in the spam folder. But I think if you start with just understanding who those groups of customers that you're looking for, because at the end of the day, as it's always been said, it's people buy from people. I still haven't seen a piece of software that trolls the internet and says, oh, look, a holiday in Benidorm or in Mexico. I'll book that for myself. Software doesn't do that. It's a human being. And so much of the artificial intelligence and all these widgets that go on websites, and I don't want to upset people who develop those things, but so many of them are so early in their development that they are so open to abuse. And again, do you value your customer so little that you make them answer or go through a system that is purely generated by a computer sitting in an office somewhere, or a hosting service sitting in the cloud somewhere? Do you do that, or do you actually say, pick the phone and say, hello?
Mhm.
A lot of people fear that.
Yeah.
Is picking up the phone. I think the metrics piece is when you have a funnel and you're watching the numbers, it's really important, right? We operate on that, but it's there so you can learn.
Yeah.
It's not there so you can squeeze it down harder. It's
No.
there that so you can literally learn from the people on the other side.
Yeah.
And I think that's the break is we think about it's machinery, and as long as we put enough gas into that machine, we'll get the production out of it. It's a learning mechanism. So you have to do it, right? You got to know how your customers feel, which means you have to put yourself out in front of them.
Yeah.
But if you're not using it to learn, if you're only using it to do and not using it to learn about your customer, then you're missing it. How do you like to learn about customers?
How do I like to learn about?
Yeah.
Customers?
For on behalf of your clients?
Well, the first thing is I will do the research online. I'll use things like Google, and I'll use search engines. I'll look up reports, information. I'll just gather a little just to get a feel for what's going on out there in that particular industry. And the next thing then is I'll work with the people in the company who've already been doing the work, working in that industry, who have spoken to some of the customers, who salespeople, the sales crowd.
Yep.
Okay, the guys in the sales team and the people on reception. Even the receptionist is included in these facilitated events.
Beautiful.
And what we do then is we just talk about it, and we just take one product that the company makes or one service that the company develops, and then sort of ask, who do you want as the customers? And mostly the first answer is, are the ones who pay. Okay, which it comes every time. I said, okay, well, we'll tick that one off.
Yeah.
Now, who do you want as customers? What industry do you want them to be in? Okay, what sort of background do these people are? And we start building up this hypothesis, which is going to feed the persona, the buyer persona.
Right.
Okay, and in many cases, the buyer persona, and if the people watching would like to have a little look at or get a pen out and a pad, and they can start scribbling away. I will write this up. My notes here, they're all hand scrawn at the moment.
Sure.
I'll write them up, and start developing a customer persona of their ideal customer. Okay, that's the first one I'll start with, because that's the one that's going to be the easiest to actually attract. And when you think about it, for each of the groups that you're targeting, you'll have a different persona. And so some people will say, oh, I got about 1,000 different products. I can't do 1,000 personas. No, the person who buys one product is likely to be buying a lot of other products as well.
Sure.
And it's a particular type of person. And so you develop this hypothesis about that person. Okay. And that's what you write up in your persona. And it's a document. It's a record of the potential activities and actions of the ideal customer. The buyers for products and services your business delivers. Okay, so think about one of the products or one of the services, write that down on a whiteboard, have the team around you and start talking to them about who buys this. And then somebody will say, oh, well, it's people working in a company doing this and they buy it for the company, or it's an individual if you go in consumer market. And always start with assumptions, create the hypothesis, and then the next stage towards the end of all this is to actually do the market research, is to actually go and ask the questions that you've created by creating this persona. And what I'd like to do now is to go through some of the stages and some of the sections of the actual persona, building it up.
Let's do it.
The basics are going to be what you see everywhere. Okay, age, demographic. Oh no, sorry. Let's start with a name. Give the person a name.
Yeah.
Okay, and the reason for that is when you're writing content, when you're thinking about the person you're selling to, if you've got a name to them, it's taken a whole different meaning to you.
Right.
It's like when you gentlemen, and I'm sure everybody who's watching have received a gift at Christmas when they were younger, or they received a present and a birthday or a wedding gift. You've all sat down and you've got the pens out and you've written to different people who've sent you gifts. If it's a close friend, you write in a much more relaxed way than if it was a great aunt.
Because you think about them as a person.
Because you think of them as a person.
Yeah.
You can't think of the customer as a number. You've got to think them and visualize them. And when I say visualize, go and get a photograph. that best represents the person.
That's a
Okay,
great idea. Stick that
you can do
right
it
in your office.
Yeah, and stick it on the document.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and this is the crazy thing, because there's actually a website out there called thispersondoesnotexist.com. Okay,
What is that?
If you've got a moment, go on one of the other things, and basically what they do is they take millions of images, they merge them together, and every time you refresh the page, a different face appears. But that person does not exist. It's a multiple of many other photographs.
Got it.
So you're not going to accidentally have somebody that's a relative of one of the people in the company as a photograph you picked up off Google Images. And so that's a great way of doing it. So you put down the basic demographic, age, job title,
picture,
income,
name,
education.
picture.
Yeah, you've got your picture now in your name.
Yeah.
Status, whether single, married, living with somebody or whatever, where they live. Okay, now there's a couple of important things in there. Education level. There's a reason for putting that in. And it's not because you only want to sell with people with degrees. What you want to do is to understand what sort of language are they likely to be using themselves. Okay, sure. And it doesn't, again, these are just assumptions and hypotheses. They're not saying that's definitely what our customer is. We'll find that out further down the line.
Right.
So do they understand the language of your industry? If they've got an education in hydraulics, then they'll understand you as a hydraulics company. Mm-hmm. But if they haven't got an education in that, they've got it in some other subject, sure, then they won't have that. Okay, and then the next section is about a backstory. Who is this person? How did they get where they are today? You know, what's their life like? Because now you're building a picture up of that individual. It's all fictitious. But it's based around some of the comments made by individuals said, oh yeah, I know the guy who buys that from us. And what we do is we write, he does this, that, and he goes fishing on a Saturday and he goes playing sport on a Sunday or whatever the thing is.
And it's so relatable.
Yeah, because
it's so relatable. I can't relate to somebody who's 45 years old, male, female, lives in Ontario, Canada, and drives a 4Runner. I have no relation. Well, maybe the 4Runner piece, and maybe the Canada piece. But you know that, like, but if you start telling me, you know, I'm trying to relate this to people in the small business world. It's like you have to think about the humanity of what's at play here, because it's the only way to have a relationship.
They are human beings. They have a life.
Right, and we seem to have gotten away from that. Yeah, maybe through an over engineering. And I'm not taking away engineering of marketing and sales. It's important, but the balance sure seems to be out of whack, doesn't it?
For our clients, sorry, Nigel. That's it. For our clients, when we walk through the persona process, a lot of times what we'll do is we'll just brainstorm a bunch of things that, you know, make them their favorite customers, right? Yeah. But then the reason why behind all of this, and I think at the very beginning you mentioned this, and I want to go back to it, is you want to get as much of the right people as steer away from the wrong people. Yeah. And if you're writing for that person, it should almost feel like a letter, which is why you should give your persona a name. It's like, hey, Bob, I have a thing for you, and it's amazing, and it's going to do everything that you need. It's going to answer all of your problems. And so if you can talk to Bob, which, by the way, tells Larry to take a hike because Larry's not your favorite customer, right? Mm-hmm. That's going to give them more and help fence the right people in so that they start engaging with you.
Yeah. I'll come back to that subject because of the personas I've done for clients. Another important thing, because I work mostly online, and in the digital hemisphere, the use of technology, personal use and work use. Because if you're selling B2B, then the person is doing it from a business perspective. So their approach to technology is going to be different in work than it is at home. And then the next thing is what their internet activity is. And it's only about putting stuff down. Yeah, they get regular newsletters from an industry association. So that could give you indications of where to post your articles, where to get information in. They use also which social media platforms they use and how they actually use that. And if they've got a social media platform, go and have a look at it, especially if they're business related. So you can start looking at what sort of comments they're making, what they are talking about, and what they are relating to how do they do their research? And that's part then of the customer journey is the first step, because everyone starts in the discovery mode, and then you move on from there into the research, and then it's the decision-making process, and then it's the decision to buy. So it's the part of those steps. Okay, and then comes back, why are they buying your product?
In the first place.
And what are they actually buying?
Right.
And you and I, Dave, we've had a discussion about this on a conversation a couple of months ago, where I said to you, and it's a well-known analogy, when someone buys a drill bit, they ain't buying the drill bit, they're buying the hole that drill bit makes.
Right.
And so you've got to understand what it is about the customer. What are they actually buying from you? Okay, it may be this. That's what you're selling.
Yeah.
What they're buying is completely different.
And that's big. I want to stay on that for a second, particularly for the people who are, well, for everybody, but for people who are fractional, as people try to put themselves out as independent, there's this history at place, and that is, I'm going to send you my resume. And from that, you'll find that I can solve your problems. And it's just not so. It's just the resume is the drill bit. It's not the whole. And it's so funny this year I've been telling people, don't send your resume to people. If you want fractional work, don't send your resume. Think about their side of the table, know what pains and problems they have, and articulate how you can solve that, because it's about them, not you. And that's what just drives me nuts about how we're sort of finding purchase in the new soil here, in the new normal is, what the hell does a resume have to do? And I'm going to get so much shit for this. I know that's okay. I'm just going to get
no, I agree with you.
But it's like, if of all the businesses that are like, I'm trying to grow, I'm facing some problems, I don't have a skill set, and to ask them, like, well, somewhere in that 3 pages of my history, can you sort of use a divining rod to extrapolate how I might be useful to you?
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. And the only reason we do it that way is because we're used to doing it that way.
Well, and that's
so weird.
Yeah. I mean, and think of it more like the better analogy for people that are trying to connect with the right audience and to get hired is probably like a cocktail party, right? You don't barge into a cocktail party and say, here are all the things that I can do or that I've done, and bore each other to tears by all me. Exactly. And so instead you say, here's an interesting anecdote, or here's something that I've done, or here's a relatable journey that we've walked through. And so thinking of that from your customer's perspective and saying, here's how we solved that problem. You're going back to the drill bit and the holes. There's one step back further from that. Why did they need the hole in the first place, right?
Yeah.
So for your premier shelf hanging process, here's what I did, right? And so, bringing all that in can be really helpful, but you don't want to bore people by being all about you.
Yeah, I think I go back now to the 70s, the 1970s, last century.
ABBA, the Bee Gees, Led Zeppelin, love it. Great decade.
And I had a Saturday job working in a tool shop, selling tools, and I loved it there because I got really big discounts on tools. And I was always given the job of looking after the ladies. Okay, when a woman came in, I was the one, Nigel, go and sort her up, because the other guys, they didn't like talking to the women because the women didn't understand what, this has nothing to do with sexism or anything else like that. This is just the reality of the time. And they used to send me, I was 18, fresh-faced, wet behind the ears, all that sort of stuff. And I'd be sent out, get a bit embarrassed because I had to go and talk to someone of the opposite gender, and off I'd go and chat, and I'd say, oh, hello, you seem to be having difficulty. Yes, I'm looking for a screwdriver. Oh, what do you need the screwdriver for? Because there are lots of different types of screwdrivers. And I'd get into the conversation, and I'd end up selling them far more than they came in for, because I'd say, well, if you do that, you'll need to get a cutters, because if you want to put an electric plug on a machine, you need to do this. And I used to get so much response. And then I used to get a bonus then because of all the sales I was doing.
Nice.
Which the other guys weren't very happy about, but they just didn't like, they wanted blokes to come in and say exactly what they wanted and then just do it for, I had the patience to talk to them. But it's that conversation I could have with the customer that enabled me to on-sell, upsell, and do all the other things that went with it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that on the internet.
Yeah.
And even though you've got your little direct messenger widget in the corner of the website,
right,
how many people will click on that and start typing?
Right.
And this is where the internet breaks down, because it's impersonal and you're pushing everyone to be doing it self-service.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And some people like a little help because they don't know what thing is. They might not know what question to ask.
Mm-hmm.
To get the answer to what they're looking for. And there's no shame in asking the question. And this is one of the reasons why I go through this process with a client to ask them, well, you're selling this, you see it from, you have privileged knowledge, and you're doing it from the perspective of the business. I need to sell 10 of these a week to make our margins.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the people buying are only buying one. So you may have to change your story 10 times to get each one of them to buy it, but they're all buying the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But they're buying it for different reasons. And that's where you've got to think about this. Otherwise, you'll just put the same emails out to everybody with just the name change. And that's personalizing it.
Yeah.
No, it's not. Okay. And people recognize them now. It's crazy. Anyway, the one thing that's important about persona documents is that they're living. There's always new stuff to add to them. And that's why it's important to always return to them once a month or every other month. And once you learn a little bit more about your client or that particular demographic, that particular persona type customer, go back in and add it there. And this is what the beauty of all those documents are. Okay. And some people say, well, I got 1,000 clients, customers, I'm going to have 1,000 different personas. There's a supermarket in the UK called Tesco. I know they've made some inroads into the United States a few times, but I don't think they've been very successful. And Tesco, it's the largest supermarket. Something like 7 in every 10 pounds spent in supermarkets in the UK are spent in Tesco.
Tesco? Yeah, I've heard that. Yep.
Okay, so how many, out of all the millions of people who go through their doors every day, how many personas have they got for all their customers?
Oh boy. Well, it's either one or thousands.
16.
Okay, that was close.
16.
Closer to
They're
one.
that thick.
Uh-huh.
They are tomes.
Wow.
And everybody involved in the marketing department, everybody who gets involved in senior level, they're all given these to read. Okay, and this is the thing about it. Once you created those personas, make sure everybody involved in customer facing actually gets to read them. And you said earlier about customers you don't want. Sometimes it might pay to actually do a persona of a customer that you want to be watching out for, that you don't want. Time wasters, people who are just going to drain your energy and not give you the things that you want. And I've actually done a few of those. His name was Dick. And the whole, sorry, Richard. And
Richard.
yeah. And as a result of that, they were able to identify this particular type of client. So when the phone went, or when they met that particular type, they knew, okay, yeah, be nice, be polite, pleasant, but you know you're not going to get anywhere with them. Okay, so it's about backing off, and it might seem a bit of a challenge for some salespeople, but this company had learned from experience that is the wrong type of customer. They know they're not going to sell anything to them.
For sure. Nigel, I'm going to allow folks to talk quick. And so if anyone else wants to join in on the conversation, feel free. So for our attendees,
is it time to open it up?
Feel free to join in and chat with us. Yes.
Well, while we're waiting for people to come up with questions, Nigel, how do you, so it's the right stuff, right? You sharpen your blade on the customer, you get to know them, you get smart. Historically, that has come as sort of a moment in time, usually part of a planning session, and then it gathers dust. That happens a lot. That's very, very common. How do you take this approach, this buyer persona approach, and make it endemic to the business with your clients? Have you structured it in a way? How do you keep it alive and well?
It's about making sure it's included on the management meetings.
Okay.
If you've got a team,
got it.
Put on the management meetings at least once a month. and or every 2 months, say, so just to push people. And the important thing, I think this is one of the things about the documents themselves. They're very important as far as every employee in the company is concerned. So a new person who comes in, they get a set of the documents to read, okay, so they can understand it as part of their induction process.
Yeah.
For the marketing team, because you understand the language and because you've used Google Trends and you've looked through keyword analysis and stuff like that, you know what sort of keywords they're likely to be typing in. And it may not be the keywords that the company would use because they're trying to stand out amongst their peers. And this is a big issue. Other things are, what sort of imagery do you want to show on your website? What sort of imagery you want to show in your advertisements, so that it reflects that particular persona? Because today it's so easy to change an image and put a different type of customer in there. It's not like the old days when you had to do a 35-second advert to go on the television, and that cost you 90, 100,000 to produce, and then it costs you 10,000 every time you want to put it up online or on a TV program. It's so easy today and so inexpensive that you can actually focus in and target particular customers. And that's why I said at the beginning, who do you want as a customer? Go after them. Yeah,
it's interesting because it's psychologists might tell us, there's only a certain number of the kinds of people. We might have more personas than there are actual personality types. That's a different conversation with the psychologist on a different day, but it's a fascinating thing. And you make a good point. I found that we have a lot of people in Voyager and a lot of people in Dave's world too, and who come from Traction, the EOS system, and having a mechanism that reports on business is great. Got to have it, right? Super, super helpful. But I think we're still shallow in our economy on how well we use those tools to really learn about the customer. Talk about sales, deals, pipeline, all important, have to do it. With all that, right? What is the key thing we learned from our customer today, this week? What are the recurring themes? I look for tools like Traction and EOS and other things. Like they probably have to start thinking about adding that in. Because you can only engineer so much, right, Dave? You have to think through the human part.
Well, and
we are all humans.
I mean, I think the thing that I forget sometimes, like working on my business, is that we don't go back to our personas nearly enough. We do it annually, right? And to talk about it monthly would be a huge difference in what do you learn and adding to those things. Because who do you want? You want more of the people that you want to work with, and less of the people that you don't. And we're getting pretty good at actually saying, these people aren't great. And so especially when we get pushback from clients that we don't like, okay, let's let them go. That's fine. It's going to save us. And I think that's probably one of the most powerful parts about narrowing down on your niche is it lets you say no to more people so that you can be more laser focused on being the absolute hell yes to the people that are interested and do fit your exact niche. So if I'm trying to be everything to everyone, I'd have to have 1,000 personas. If I'm trying to be an amazing insert your company here, all I need to do is be fantastic for the 5 or 6 kinds of people that are going to be served by this.
And we'll give you the type of which will enable you to achieve your goals and your ambitions.
Right.
Nigel, do you have for our listening audience, do you have a starter on your website or your LinkedIn page or a worksheet that gets people anchored in, you've talked about such wonderful things here, but some place where they can kind of get their feet on the ground and start to embrace this idea of buyer personas through a more human way?
What I'll do is I'll make one. I'll produce one, and what I'll do is I'll send it to you. It's or if they want, if anybody wants to follow my LinkedIn profile or connect with me, I'm on Twitter. I post things out all the time.
Sure.
Little comments and little soothsaying bits that I put out there. But what I can do is I can do one, and if somebody wants one, as long as they give me say until next Thursday, Friday, I'll produce one and a template. I've got a template there, and I'll just need to clean it up a little bit.
I imagine it's something that changes a lot. I'm going to put Nigel, I'm going to put you in the chat here so everybody can see, but you do this electronically, you do this in the digital world. It changes. Like what this was 10 years ago is not what it is today and not what it's going to be tomorrow, because digital does matter and AI does matter and automation things do matter. How do you talk about how you sort of bridge those two?
Experience has taught me over 20 years that the only things that have changed as far as the internet is concerned is the technology.
Okay.
Humans complain today about the same things that they don't like about websites and that they don't like about platforms they go to as they did 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And they list these are the list: too much information, too little information, badly structured, can't find what I'm looking for, no contact details, or really difficult to get in touch with the company.
Basics.
They're all basics.
So basic. And there's billions of dollars spent on this every year.
Yeah, flash animation. Oh, no, not flash, animated introductions, graphics that are totally redundant and don't help in passing the message on. What else was there? Oh, and no prices.
Right.
Yeah.
No prices. Okay, on the e-commerce sites, yes, they've usually got the price on there, but on people like, especially the fractional, or the not self-employed, the self-employed freelancers, those are the ones who don't put their prices up there.
Put your prices up there.
There's another one, the languages industry. They're renowned for saying, "Oh, get a free quotation." So you're imagining some company who's got some legal document with a potential buyer in another country that they need to get the document translated, and that company will send this confidential industrial piece of information, to an anonymous translation company for them to tell them how much it's going to cost to get it translated.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry, people don't do that. And I've had this argument in a number of European-wide conferences in the languages industry. And I said, why do you think someone will send you a private and confidential document to somebody who knows nothing, who you don't know, just to get them to give you a price to say it's going to be 16p a word or 16 cents a word? It's
amazing how much that is resisted in professional services.
Yeah.
And it drives me nuts. So I tell people, set your price as a fractional, set it, build your business around it, quote it, and publicize it.
Yeah.
Well, there's these variables.
But my competitors will find out. And then they'll undercut me.
Right. Not to the customer, there's not variables.
But this has been the argument all along, and I always point out to small business people and say, hold on a second, your customers, your competitors will find out how much you charge, but they probably already know anyway, and you probably know their prices, and everyone in the industry knows the prices. The people who don't know the prices are the customers, because they come to your websites and there's nothing there. So put it up there. It'll frighten the life out of all your competitors. Okay, but they won't put the price up because they don't want to show it up themselves. So if somebody comes along and sees the price, when they phone you up, when they get in touch, they ain't going to argue about the money because they know how much you're going to charge.
Right.
And that's going to save you 20. I mean, the amount of time, and Dave, for those of us, I used to run an agency, but tracking time and hours and making that even real and digestible and all that is exhausting. I think people are trying to protect themselves from the downside. I don't want anybody to abuse me, so I have to write a scope and have some protection there. So I don't want to publish it. But I think we're going to find ourselves on the other side of that. We have enough information, and there's been enough experience in the market where people are buying products from the service category that we're all in, that it's going to get kind of stabilized, right? It's not, the variables are going to kind of start to go away even more. So that's an interesting thing.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I would love to hear from our attendees if you guys have any questions. And this is actually the spot if you're feeling like you don't want to be recorded and you'd like to join up and ask as well, just let us know, and then we can pause the recording so that we can get into open office hours and do that as well. So as personas is a personal thing, you have to know a lot about your customer, and that takes some big questions. And especially for folks that are just getting started with setting up a persona, especially if you have a lot of clients already that you've either worked with in your past, or if you're an existing business and you have a lot of customers that you're already working with, I find it's a helpful exercise to just grade those customers. List every single one of them out. The ones that you would work with in a heartbeat, you give an A. The ones that are like, there's a couple of things that I don't like about that customer, that they're not that profitable, you give them a B. And then C's and D's. C's, you're like, I wouldn't take this one if I knew again. And D, you need to fire this dork right away. Right. Yeah. So, and then label all those out, but then look at your A's and start looking for what's common between all of them, and take your D's and make sure that you're writing so that they don't want that. Right. So one of our things with our D clients is they didn't have budget. And so we do start by saying, we're at least X cash, for a website at BusyWeb, it's 15 grand and up.
Yep.
There's a lot of folks that can't afford that, and that's fine. That's great. We'll find them a partner, but we don't work well with that. We don't know how to under deliver.
And that's one of the reasons for putting prices on the site. I know everyone will turn around and say, but every project's different. But if that's the case, just put up a case study, right? Different types of case studies, and say this came in on budget, on time, on budget, and it cost X thousand, or it cost 30,000 or whatever it was.
Right.
And then people will look at it and say, well, yeah, but the results were, and that's what the case study is about.
Right.
So it gives indications of what things are going to be costing.
Yeah. I would like for everybody to get in the habit of thinking about their customers more. That the big takeaway from this particular show, and this is, I think there's some habits that we have, and I think they're fine. Sort of sales and marketing engineering habits, very easy to get into, but the habit, it's interesting how the psychology habits, the mindset habits, the persona, really thinking about that. Not as easy of a habit, I don't think. And that's fair, right? Maybe it's just harder to think of. But boy, if you're independent or a small business, it's a hell of a good habit to get into. Jan's raising her hand, so I'm going to shut up for a minute. Hi, Jan.
Good afternoon, everyone.
How are you?
Hi.
I'm well, thank you. I hope each of you are also.
It's Friday. It's Friday, and we're talking about buyer personas. What could be better?
Love it. Absolutely. Let's paint that picture, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. What's on your mind?
Well, I have a question. I'm a linear person, and I'm thinking about all of your Nigel's comments, as well as John, what you and Dave have added, and picturing how I might roll something out, because I'm at that place where I'm going to start doing these pieces, so it's timely and appreciated. And my question is, you talked about not just sticking a resume up there. Totally agree. But how would you all, whatever collective answers, how would you look at the balance of this experience we're going to talk about and the value, right? The value proposition, really. What are they going to get out of hiring me to help them with their interim COO work versus telling them my qualifications? However I might do that, resume or not. I probably wouldn't do a resume, but I might do my bullet points and all those pieces. But how do I balance that? Should the experience lead the conversation? Should that be the fiber of the website? And then, by the way, here's how we substantiate that. Here's why you would want to know more, because I have done these things or can impact this, or here's a case study, et cetera. What's the balance and presentation that you guys might think is best?
Sure, I'll start with that one because I spend a lot of time with that and counsel a lot of people. So every place in your introductory pieces, right, that you're sort of referring to, wherever you see me, I, and we, get rid of it. And the reason and it's really hard, Jan, this is really hard to do, but it's important in that because it's about they and them. You know, it's their issues and their problems and the struggles they're trying to overcome. it's a hard thing to do, but when you do that, when you do that, you start sort of reversing and thinking about their side of the table. So you come from ops, right, Jan? You come from operations.
Yes, and sales.
Perfect. So you already know the problems they have on their side of the table. You're already very well schooled in, like, geez, the things that people suffer in there, and you're able to solve them. So as you think
Yes,
about your
yes.
LinkedIn page, and you think about an email you might send, or just meeting somebody at a network event like this, starting with their side and their issues is always the way to go. So I would not start with my qualifications in my resume at all. I would start with, you're suffering from some things that's keeping you from growing, and they're probably sales and operation related. And you're gonna, in order to grow, so this is all about them, right? In order to grow, you're gonna have to overcome those things, and I think I can help. So that whole conversation, you were in there once. I can help. The first 4 sentences were about them. That's how I would do it. But I'll turn it over to Nigel and Dave to chime in on this idea as well.
Dave, do you want to go, or
Go for it, Nigel. I want to hear you.
It's very much what John just said. From my experience, and this is some of the stuff that I've done when I've been looking at content within websites. You find we do this, we do that, we do this, we do that. And I used to create what's called a wee report.
I like that.
And basically, I just looked to see how many times they referred to themselves and how many times they referred to the client, the customer, the potential customer. And you often found that 70, 80, 90% would be about themselves and not about the customer. We formed our company in 1999 to provide the highest possible service to the industry. Over the last 20 years, we've trained all our staff to the highest possible levels so that they can provide you with the best quality of product and service that you're looking for. And that's the first reference you get. You get to the end of the page and you've read all the content that's put there and you still don't know what they actually do.
Yeah.
And I see it time and time again. It's about them.
Right.
As John said.
The reason it's a struggle, Jan, is the culture, right? The culture of the economy. And I think this is probably true in the UK too, but definitely the culture of the work economy. For the last 50 years, in order to move from one place to another, there's this resume-ing. There's this, now it's resumeing all the way up through what's your, keywords on your resume that go through a talent thing. I mean, there's so much of that. And now in this new economy, people are not thinking that way as much anymore. So it's hard to sort of shift our brains from that, right? Because for 50 years, like, okay, if you're working it, pick a company, right? Boeing, and you want to go work for Airbus, send us your resume.
Right.
And it's just so common, but it gets you off, particularly as a fractional, it gets you off of the point, which is, I'm interested in the problems I need solved. And I'm interested in getting people who can help me solve them. And please come to me with a solution to my problem. It's so I think we're developing new muscles in this area, Jan, as well, but for the right reasons.
Agreed. And John, I think the thing that you just said that I really want to key back on is a lot of times I think we get caught up, especially in the fractional world, with who we are by what we've done. And so that's where the resume stuff comes in. But people aren't interested in what you've done as much as they're interested in what you can solve for them. So you need to rewrite your resume per se, or your cover letter as you engage with people to do a job, or to engage with them and say, here's what I can solve for you. And here's what I do. It comes back to Simon Sinek and start with why, right? Yeah. So, it's, we focus too much about what we've done or the tactics, and even just lining up, well, I've worked for Boeing, or I've worked for XYZ company. Yeah. So what? Yeah. I get that that's a company that I might want to aspire to, or that there might be some transferable stuff, but don't make your audience do the heavy lifting on that. Tell them what you do for them. Tell them how you'll make them succeed, not just for the customer that you're trying to reach or the company that you're trying to reach, but for the kind of person inside of that organization that's making the decision about working with you. You're writing to the CEO or to the operations manager that needs your solution. So you write to them for what you solve for them.
Mhm.
Does that help?
Yeah.
So Jan, I think it goes on top. It's the
Right.
very first
Right.
thing. It really does.
I
And
love
it's-
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it goes on top. And I think the fun part when you start to really sort of think about that, Jan, and work that into how you market yourself, it's a very wonderfully cathartic moment, because you're being
Mhm.
authentic at that point. You're not trying to puff up your experience or sort of rely on some awards. You're kind of thinking deeper into, I call when in my courses and all this, I talk about this as, what is your referability? For
Mhm.
someone not to say something nice about you, it has to do with you as a person. It has to do with you as your skill set on just sort of the things that you love and are passionate about. I did a post recently is, what do you have an infinite amount of water in the well for? And if you turn that into a career, like in ops, right? Like, I had one person I was counseling who was an ops person about a year ago. And he was really struggling with this, Jan, same sort of thing. And I said, well, tell me, over the arc of your career, what's your thing? It's like, he said, because he was doing the same thing. He's like, well, I've done this and I've worked for that and this and that. But I said, what's your thing? What's your thing? And he goes, you know what? I love the freaking fire drills. I just love the fire drills. Every time in ops, like, I'm the person when something's hotter than hell and the world is crashing down and everybody's panicked and hair on fire. I'm like the fire marshal. And I said, that is your tagline. I am your fire marshal. And he was just like, I can say that. I'm like, yeah, you can say that. That's what they need. So that's a good way to think about it. And I encourage you to do the same.
Thanks. A quick question to kind of to follow along on that.
Mhm.
And you kind of you said it your way, which was what do you have water in the well for?
Yeah.
Or which well is really full of?
Yeah.
Meaning where's your passion, right? What
Yeah.
energizes you? For him, it was the fire drills.
Yeah.
How about that? My question, but before you even said that, I was going to ask about when you're going through this and you're describing everything at the beginning, as we've just said, how appropriate is it to show that energy, to show that
Totally.
passion, fire in your
Totally.
gut for that thing versus ho hum, just do this business thing that's a little bit clean and crisp.
Show it.
And I would think you would, it's our opportunity, right? That we're
Totally.
the tool that we want them to buy to make that whole better
Totally.
at work, right? The
Show
drill,
it.
is your analogy.
Totally. Very relevant, very needed.
Okay.
That's what people need out of you, is that authenticity. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
this-
that fire, that fire shows it becomes magnetic, right? Like, I
Passion.
need Jan on my team. She's just raring to go. And she
So-
loves this stuff.
Yeah, right. And
Mhm.
that's, I certainly do.
Yep.
Last question, and then I'll leave time for whoever else wants to talk. Hopefully they're not
It's
like
good. It's good.
cursing at me. When you talk about the picture, or like this gentleman who loves the fire drills, one of the
Mhm.
things that I've been looking at when I'm thinking about visuals that I want to describe what I do is a Swiss Army knife,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
with different blades open, because in operations I might be talking to that
Mhm.
entrepreneur, which is
Mhm.
kind of where my target is, where they're growing and now they're like, oh my gosh, my widget is selling, and what am I going to do? I need more help, and I don't know how to hire people, and I don't know how to do inventory management, and I'm not
Mhm.
sure what to do about dispatch. Oh my gosh, and
Mhm.
production. In the world, right? So many businesses we know fail because they can't now exist and live in that world because it's not their thing. Making the widget was their thing.
Mhm.
Manufacturing that widget. How do we go to the next level to be sustainable?
Mhm.
And so I want to be able to come in and say, calm down. I got this. We can put all those pieces in place for you to do the right thing at the right time so you can get to the next level, and you keep doing what you're doing.
Mhm.
You're the rainmaker. You keep doing that, and consult, right, with you after all of our meetings and deciding how we're going to go forward. We'll do those things at the right time, because in my toolkit, right, in my Swiss Army knife, I can
Yeah.
hire salespeople. I can train them. I can coach them. I could even sell for you, if I have to cover that. Oh, you need to hire somebody. Oh, you inventory, warehouse. We can do all that. Fleets, I don't care. We can tackle it all. I want them to know I've got it for them. They can go back to doing their good work, and we're going to move forward like the Swiss Army knife thing. And so, is that too?
Well, I think you just created a persona, and so I want to have Nigel
Yeah.
throw in on this, and maybe have you have you really did, which is interesting.
Yeah,
is
I guess you're right.
You're
Mhm.
the Swiss Army knife, right? So that's great. That's about you. That's awesome. But with Nigel, I'm hearing your persona is the people whose hair is on fire.
Yeah.
So your
Mhm.
persona is somebody who's panicked. They can't get this stuff. Not all personas are, what's at the heart of some, I love Simon Sinek. Don't get me wrong. The why thing, I totally get it.
Right.
But sales are made on pain. So is Nigel, is there
Mhm.
anything wrong with creating a persona of somebody who's, hair on fire? It's a disaster. Talk about
Do it.
personas and what they can be.
That's the whole purpose of personas, is understanding that if you're in a position to, it's like the 24-hour emergency call out plumber.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay, put that on the thing people can see. 24 hours, one telephone number. It's going to cost you this much. We'll be there within 20 minutes, but it's in a certain area. Make sure you got the information there. But if you're chasing after the person with the emergency plumbing situation, you just write down who are those people.
There you go.
Okay, and you start working out who's going to phone at 2 o'clock in the morning. How am I going to manage someone phoning at 2 o'clock in the morning? So you can do the same for a 24-hour call out emergency plumber as you can do for somebody whose business is suddenly accelerating and they haven't got the people in place. What are they going to do?
Right.
So you create the same persona of that person, or you create the persona of that person, and then you feed that. You actually write your content, all your social media stuff is all around that sort of, is all around that focus, because you're focused in on that person.
That's a good
Great.
persona for
Great.
operations people.
Yeah.
That's a
Good
really
catch. Thank
persona.
you. Yes.
Yep. That's a very good
Love
one.
it. Hey guys, I apologize. I actually have a meeting that I got to jump over to.
And it's
This has
2:03.
been
All
A
right.
tremendously fast hour. Nigel, thank you for hosting with us and being our guest star.
Thank you, Nigel.
The chat.
My pleasure.
Nigel T. Packer is how you're going to find him. And it's been just a delight. Next week, we have Bronson Ma coming up for talking about branding and brand identity.
Yep.
And so actually, John, I think you introduced me to Bronson. He's the Chief Creative Officer of Bronson Ma Creative and has a ton of great ideas about how to brand yourself and your business. So we're going to talk through that in detail.
That'll be good. Find Nigel on LinkedIn, and we'll post this up, and think about those customers in ways you haven't before.
Yeah.
Done.
That's
Thanks,
awesome.
everybody.
Nigel, we'll see you soon. Come back.
Thank you very much indeed.
All right.
Thank
Have
you.
a good weekend, everybody.
Take care, everyone.
Take care.
And thank you, Dave, and hope that all clears up pretty quickly.
Yeah. Right.
Absolutely.
Take care. And have a good fishing weekend, John.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
take care.